here and good afternoon. Part 2 of our show from the law offices of Nessie in St. Louis. We're 216 North Main. You can reach Jim Nessie at his office at 622-1222. In this hour, you'll meet Ed Martin.
Are you happy with the news you get? Well, not all news is good news. You know good reporting when you see it. Check TucsonSentinel.com every day for breaking news and investigative reports. Have your say in the comments. It's all in TucsonSentinel.com, your local independent nonprofit news. You can rely on...
I have no idea what's done. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the John C. Scott Talk Show. The law offices of Nessie in St. Louis at 216 North Main. You can reach Jim Nessie at 622-1222. How do you choose a DUI lawyer? I guess people will ask that of themselves if they're stopped, but how do you do it? What's your suggestion?
One of the best ways to do it, I think, is to talk to an attorney. If you have an attorney, like a family attorney who does wills, trusts, or whatever, somebody you know, first off, go to that attorney and say, who do you recommend? And then see who that person recommends. The next best way, honestly, I think, is now the Internet. Go look online and find 3 attorneys. Pick the 3 you like the best. Go talk to them. First off, call their office, see if they're available, see if they'll talk to you on the phone. Then go there and sit down and talk to that attorney. Because if you hire somebody and you can't sleep at night, no matter what the price you paid, it's not worth it. I think that people need to feel comfortable with the attorney that they hire. And the way you do that is you interview the attorney, you ask the attorney about his or her abilities, you ask the attorney about things, whether they've taught other attorneys, like at seminars and that sort of stuff. You ask them about what they're going to do in your case. Are they going to interview people? What are they going to do as far as, do they have any ideas as far as strategy is concerned? You just want to interview that person. It's interesting. I've seen people walk in and they tell me their story and they don't ask me a question about my practice. And I think that's the wrong way of going about it. I think it's as much of an interview from the attorney asking the client about the facts of the case and that person's life as it is about the person sitting in the office asking the attorney about these things.
You interview people as well.
Oh, absolutely.
You need to be comfortable in defending them.
Sure. Honestly, there are people who we've talked about the case, and I've said, look, I don't think I can help you. We can negotiate the best plea, or I can reduce the amount of damage as much as possible, or might not be able to do that. I mean, sometimes cases are so bad that you can't do that. But you still need somebody in there to look at them and to review them and make sure that all the procedures are properly followed, and at least make your case move more smoothly through the court system. And then there are many cases where we can outright win them. I mean, they come in, there are issues with them. Reasonable doubt is written all over the case. That's there in plenty of different cases. And many cases are there where we can significantly reduce the damage that it's going to do to your life.
We'll be back with Jim Nessie in this hour as we're in the law offices of Nessie in St. Louis. We're at 216 North Main. In this half hour, you'll meet Ed Martin. He is a Southern Arizona Republican radio host. He's a former horse racing official. He has announced recently he will run for Congress. He's 59 years of age. He's acknowledged he's an underdog in a David-Goliath kind of race to represent the 2nd Congressional District, but he's actively campaigning for this, and a lot of people say he's got a shot at winning the Republican nomination. Here's Ed Martin, Republican candidate for Congress in Congressional District number 2. Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Hey, John. Thanks for having me in.
I wanted to talk with you.
The conscience of Southern Arizona.
Something like that, I guess. A lot of people want to know about you. So let's talk just some basic things, and if it's too elementary, then forgive me. You grew up where?
I grew up in Brooklyn, born in Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, raised on Long Island, cut my teeth. My first job was doing blacktop on the roads in the middle of the summer, and I learned I didn't want to do too much of that because that's.
I did that. I learned that too.
I think we've all kind of done that and pulled weeds and all this other stuff. And went to St. John's University, got a degree in government politics. Got hooked up with a local official who was doing a challenge against Jacob Javits, who was an incumbent Republican senator in New York, as part of the Rockefeller political machine. I traveled the state with a guy named Al D'Amato. He started with no name ID, no money. The first poll showed Javits something like 86, D'Amato 3, and that was in April. And he won a September primary and went on to win a close three-way race in the general. I went to Washington with him as his press secretary. Worked a little bit in the Reagan administration at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, where I was in charge of congressional relations and relations with the state energy regulators. It was a time when we were trying to bring more competition into the interstate transmission of natural gas and electricity to hold rates down. Didn't want to raise my kids in a big city, so moved to upstate New York, to Albany. Bought a house in Saratoga Springs. Worked in the New York State Legislature for the majority leader. Mario Cuomo was the governor. The majority leader in the Senate was a Republican. Got involved with developing a political strategy that ultimately resulted in the defeat of Mario Cuomo. Went into private practice. Kind of got disgusted with politics. I didn't like the direction it had gone. Represented. I help people try to explain complicated issues in easily understandable ways. And one of the things I started doing along the way was, as a hobby, was a radio talk show. And I kind of thought it'd beat working for a living. Every Saturday I'd get on the air for 3 hours, and rather than just yell at the TV, I could actually talk to people. And the dialogue with people was really good. It kept you sharp. It kept you informed. We sometimes think we have all the answers or we know too much, but we need to learn from each other. And that, unfortunately, is one of the problems I think we have in today's politics, is everybody kind of demonizes everybody else, and nobody ever serious discussion about what the possible solutions are.
Let's give the whole politics thing a profile look here. You're running against Martha McSally. She has money. You need to beat her if you want to go on to beat Ron Barber. And the difference between the two of you will determine, I think, who's going to win this nomination. You've been in politics long enough to know you got to get past this first step to take on Barber. What about this campaign? You see it, I think, probably from some expertise that others don't have in regard. You talked about D'Amato.
Well,
how do you win this race?
I'm not running against anybody.
Really?
What I'm running for is for the American people, especially the people here in southern Arizona, where we're number 6 in poverty, and basically I'm looking for the American people to stand up and reassert themselves in terms of our individual freedoms, our individual responsibility, and individual accountability. Today we live in a country where the federal government, the NSA, is warehousing and storing information about every phone call you make, every email you send and receive, every text message you make, every website you visit. We have a Department of Justice that is wiretapping reporters and threatening investigative reporters with criminal prosecution. We have an IRS which has done it to both sides, but we have an IRS that has harassed and threatened individuals as well as organizations based on ideology. This is not the country that a lot of people went and fought for these days. We have real problems in this country, and we consistently get pushed into one-size-fits-all solutions that just totally ignore the fact that we are individuals. So I'm running to give Southern Arizona a better choice than we had in the last congressional election. That was a tough vote for me. And here's why. I summed up the level of that last election as watching Ron Barber ride around in a car talking about he's for the middle class. We're all for the middle class. And then the TV ads of Martha McSally climbing mountains with her dog and raising her right hand to make her dad proud. Well, we all want to make our parents proud. But what about the issues? What about us? What about the things that have been going on and been eroding in this community? What about the lack of job creation? We are number 6 in poverty. Everyone should be ashamed of that.
How would you differ as far as Martha McSally? She had said, look, I would not have voted to close the government down. That separated her from the conservative portion of the House. How would you have voted?
I mean, let me tell you, nobody voted to close the government down. Here's the problem with the process. And it's a process. When I worked in Washington in the 1980s, it was when politics worked. Politics was just as nasty, just as divisive as it is today, but you had a process. The House of Representatives would pass a bill. The Senate would pass a bill. Somebody might filibuster on something. Okay? They appointed conferees. They appointed a conference committee where they put a bunch of senators in the room from one party and a bunch of House members from the other party in the room, and they duked it out. And they came up with the compromise. What has happened in America is we've gotten into running the country by continuing resolution. I think what we ought to have, if you do something wrong in society, you get a sanction. The government puts a sanction on you. If you don't sign up for Obamacare, you're going to get a sanction. We ought to put sanctions on members of Congress. You're elected to do the job. If what I've proposed is that if you are elected to Congress, Senate or House, and you serve in a Congress, and that Congress does not enact, I don't mean a one-house bill, enact a budget and pass the 13 appropriations bills within 30 days of the end of the fiscal year, then every member of Congress, Republican, Democrat, Senator, Senate member or House, are ineligible to run for re-election.
So you're
now,
saying
you put that in, John, you will solve this mess that we just went through.
You're saying throw them all out. That's the Tea Party.
No, I'm saying
everybody.
Put a sanction on them for not doing their job and enforce them and restore a process that used to bring order.
But where do you feel comfortable within the Republican Party? Are you a Tea Party candidate? People want to put a label on you, and I'm trying to do that. Would you help me out? You've got to help me here.
Here's my label, John. I'm going to hand it to you.
What it says, taxpayer.
Taxpayer.
Okay, we're all
That's
taxpayers.
What I am.
Okay,
that's
you're
what
taxpayer.
I am.
Nobody
and
can.
You're
conservative. You have to say that. You're running from the
right.
right. You have to say that.
I am conservative.
Right.
I am a staunch believer in the free enterprise system. I think one of the obstacles to our economic growth is the overregulation. You almost can't do anything in America today without getting permission from the government.
What is the role of government?
You can't even go down to Riedo Park and shovel manure in a horse stall without getting permission from the government.
Well, I don't want to do that anyway, but I mean,
you have to ask permission.
All right, I would do that. Let's talk about your belief in the role of government. What should it be?
I think government that's closest to the people is the most responsive to the people. I think
Would you
government
put it in a bathtub and shrink it to its lowest common denominator?
No, I think what's happened is I think over the years, I think politics. It's almost like it's almost like somebody wants to get reelected or get elected to office, and they see a problem, and if they're running for federal office, they say, "Well, I'm going to solve this local problem." So they take it up to the federal level, and the federal government has grown more and more intrusive in every aspect of our lives, including the light bulbs we have in our homes. I think what you have to do is you have to start pushing the responsibility back down to local levels of government, push some of the stuff that's being done at the federal level down to the states, and push some of the stuff that's being done at the state level down to the local.
Would you sign the Grover Norquist pledge to not raise taxes under any circumstances in America?
So if we go into a war,
no, that's a yes or no question. By the way,
nobody's asked me except you.
All right, I'm asking
you.
I
haven't read his pledge.
Okay,
but let me tell you, the only pledge that I'm interested in signing is to the pledge of the people of Southern Arizona to go in and fight for them. I mean, we have Raytheon jobs that are being shifted over to Alabama. Ron Barber sits on the appropriate committee. He also sits on Homeland Security while the federal government is spying on each and every one of us. And with all due respect to Colonel McSally, she had her chance in the last election. She came close. She should have won it. I mean, Mitt Romney carried this district. You don't win by repeating a losing game. Now, I realize that there's some people in Washington and some people locally who are willing to finance and bankroll her campaign. I mean, you look at her report; she's got all the McCain money in there, and God bless her, God bless her. But this primary is going to be next summer. And I am running to give the people of Southern Arizona a better choice than we had in the last election.
This is and can be a very conservative district, certainly within the Republican Party. Jesse Kelly, we're talking about, those that came before him, Randy Graff and others. The conservatives have been nominated out of this party. They have not done well, but they have been nominated, and a lot of people think because you are a conservative, you have an odds-on chance of beating somebody with more money, more name ID, which happens to be Martha McSally, because of your conservative stance. Is that the part of the plan to win?
Martha's got name ID because she just spent $1.6 million to get it, so everybody remembers that. That's fine. We've got plenty of time for that. I am who I am. Some people say, what kind of candidate are you? Say, I'm not the Popeye candidate. I am who I am. So why don't you listen to me? And if you like what I'm saying, then decide whether you agree. My website is edmartinforus.com, edmartinforus.com, and you can read why I'm running and what I believe in.
All right, you served in the Reagan administration. You're an admirer of the former president?
Yeah.
All right. Economic development leader, significant job creation experience. How would you create jobs?
you get the government out of the way. I think the biggest.
What does that mean? Get the government out of the way.
I think you have.
What does that mean?
I think you've got way. I think what Congress has done is Congress has abdicated its responsibility and delegated it to unelected bureaucrats who promulgate regulations that are never assessed or voted on by the elected representatives of the people. Now, John, you go around this country. And you will see state agencies in some of the states will pass regulations, but those regulations have got to get approved by the elected representatives of the people before they become permanent.
But let's talk about regulations. You want the workplace safe. That's
Absolutely.
why we have OSHA. You want food safe. That's why we.
Of course. Of course.
So those
John,
are those are government regulations.
Everybody wants this stuff.
But how do you make it safe without regulations?
Today's policy is all of the name calling and the simplistic approach that if you are against the way somebody is doing something over here, then you must be against seniors or young people or food safety or workplace safety. That is not what people are saying.
What are you saying then about regulations?
I'm saying the regulations have become too intrusive.
Name one of them.
I'm going to talk in the generic because
you can't name a specific regulation you'd eliminate.
I'll get back to you on a list.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you.
All right.
Let me tell you. What you have is because I've worked in government.
Okay.
Anybody who's worked in government, I've worked in government, I've worked outside of government. What you see is everybody tries to solve a problem. And what we are today is we are in a situation where government doesn't trust the American people anymore. And what you have is you have to fill out so many forms. There is an assumption of guilt that if you don't fill out all of these forms, anybody in business has got to deal with the compliance. The amount of money spent in this country or any individual industry on compliance has blossomed. And people are afraid to do things today because if they do something wrong, or they fill out a form wrong, or they didn't read all the small print, next thing you know, somebody is sending them a letter or knocking on their door, and they've got to hire a lawyer, or they've got to hire an accountant, and they've got to clear their name. That is not a pro-growth strategy. Nothing wrong with chasing after the Bernie Madoffs. My wife's a financial advisor. You won't believe, she had a client, John. She had a client that called up and wanted to move one investment to another investment vehicle. And she said, well, I don't really advise you to do that. And the client said, well, it's my money. She says, okay, it's your money. So she puts the trade in. Compliance stopped it because compliance didn't want the firm to be under review of FINRA, which is a self-regulatory thing that was created as a result of Dodd-Frank, subsequent to the SEC. You want a specific? I'm giving you a specific.
Okay, good. Okay? Thank you.
But what we have now is your money. If she was your advisor, and you said, I want to move my money over here, you've got some process that was created by government supposedly to say, hey, I'm going to protect you from these faulty decisions. Government can't protect individuals from making mistakes. We all make mistakes. What government needs to do is help police the scoundrels, the Bernie Madoffs, the fraud.
If you take a look at what's happened, all right, let's go to the phone lines. Ed Martin is my guest. He is a Republican candidate for Congress in CD2. I hope you'll be here often. I want you to have an enormous amount of opportunity to talk about who you are and what you are. I assure you have all the airtime you want.
Well, thanks, Jeff.
All right, and maybe we'll make you pay for it later on.
I'm sure you will.
This is we're capitalists here, okay? You understand what I'm saying?
That's good to say. It's still alive and well.
Let me go to the phone lines. Mark, I missed the callers, and we've got a couple. Mark and Joe. Let's go to Mark on our phone lines. Ed Martin is a Republican candidate for Congress. And, Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Hi, Ed. Hi, John. I have an example of a regulation. I work at a copper mine, and in my office, if I have an apple in an opened trash container, that's considered a violation. If I have a water bottle, an empty water bottle in a trash can that doesn't have a lid, that's considered a violation. And it doesn't matter if I'm hurting myself or I got a water bottle in a trash can, it's considered a citation. And when you get hundreds of citations, it makes the company look bad. So we spend a lot of wasted time trying to comply with a lot of rules that may not mean anything. And instead of focusing on the big things, the dangers, we dilute our efforts on all kinds of tasks, and that goes through every industry. It's okay at a bank. It's okay at a preschool. You can have trash in a preschool's trash can. You can't have it at a mine. It's insane. I can't bring.
All right, let's let Ed comment. Go
what
ahead.
was the rationale behind that? I mean, why? What was the reasoning behind it?
Well, okay, so if you have a trash container that sits around and festers and it's got maggots and stuff, you got areas that you don't go very often, and so that could be a health hazard. But the
I could see that in a restaurant.
They don't
in a
use
restaurant,
their judgment.
absolutely.
They don't use their judgment.
But there's also a belief. I mean, we just saw it on the shutdown. When the Obama administration closed off the open air monuments because they were afraid somebody was going to fall or somebody was going to deface the monuments. I mean, I took my grandchildren to the World War II memorial this June. I mean, you didn't see federal employees walking around saying, "I'm going to be there in case you fall down and you skin your knee."
Right.
It's this attitude that nobody can do anything anymore.
All right, Mark, thank you. I tell you what, we're going to have Ed on often, and I want you to come back with another question at another time. Let's go to Ed on our phone lines. Mark and Joe. Let's go to Joe. Ed Martin is our guest. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, what's going on? Good to hear a free market guy over there. Hey, I wanted to ask you, and I get that guy's call before me on the regulation and all those things, but something that I've been noticing lately that no politicians are really even talking about is the NSA spying, and this is really turning out to be a lot of corporate spying going on. IBM has taken a huge hit in their profits. They're down 20% right now, but it's not looking good. The BRIC nations are they're setting up their own. It's not going to be a .com. It's going to be a BRIC nation ending on that service. And I'm wondering, when will the conservatives step up for business and realize that we don't need Big Daddy Eric Holder sniffing through everybody's emails? And do you trust Eric Holder to always do the right thing if you do support the NSA?
Thanks for your question, Joe. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I started off by saying one of the problems and the reason why I'm running is because this country has changed. The people talked about fundamental change, and it didn't just start to happen under Barack Obama. It's been happening incrementally over a number of years. But we live in America today, where the federal government in the body of the National Security Agency is warehousing all this data, and this data is, I'm sure, available to the Department of Justice if they go through the proper steps to be able to access it. And this is a problem. Now, I have no problem with requiring internet service providers to maintain records, or cell phone companies. And if somebody goes to a court and they suspect that John C. Scott's been talking to somebody that they've got on a watch list, and they want to have reason to pull John's records, and they get a subpoena and they pull John's records. But to put it in a federal agency where the checks and balances can be worn down or circumvented, I think that's very troubling to basic freedoms and individual liberty.
All right, Joe, thanks for your call. We appreciate it. I'm going to stay here with Ed just a few minutes here, just a second. First of all, I just want one more minute with Ed, if you don't mind. Let's try to. I'm going to spend all my time for the next year trying to put you in a box. I hope you don't mind doing that. That's my job. Let's talk about your position on abortion, please. Pro-life, pro-choice.
You're going to need more than 1 minute on that.
Just give me your position.
I am a baptized Catholic. I do not believe in abortion, but let me tell you this. Roe versus Wade is 40 years old, and nothing has changed given the fact that you have had most presidents that were staunchly pro-life appointing judges during that time. It is a false issue. It does not come up in the House of Representatives. It could come up in the Senate in terms of an issue of confirming a judge, or a president in terms of in terms of appointing a judge. The only issue that would theoretically come up in the House of Representatives has to do with federal funding, and as far as some of the great the changes that people are talking about, those are state issues and ought to be rightly dealt with by state legislators. They don't get dealt with in Washington.
Second Amendment, very quickly. Gun rights.
It's a basic fundamental right of our society.
All right. I hope you'll come back. We're going to have many conversations.
I've loved meeting you. I've been
Thank
listening
you
to you
very
for years, but I love
I
meeting
was
you.
listening to you. I'm impressed with your talk show skills. Seriously, I am. Ed Martin, talk show host, and now candidate for Congress in Congressional District number 2.